So my name's Jordan Hollander. I'm the founder of Hotel Tech Report. We're the app store for the hotel industry. We work with all the different solutions providers and help hoteliers find the best solutions out there. Before we introduce our guests here, I wanted to ask a question. So Gilad had ended the last session asking, encouraging people to try tools like Lovable or Figma AI. Has anyone actually tried these no-code tools? Could you raise your hand? What I've found with these tools at this stage is they're really, really cool, but you kind of get 80% of the way there, and then it ends up being completely worthless. So I think it's really important to be testing these tools and to be learning and staying ahead of what's out there. But being too overzealous, if you're at a hotel chain or brand, thinking about building your own AI agents with these tools, we're pretty far off from this stuff. And so I think that the really important thing that you could do is kind of lean into the solution provider ecosystem, because they're the ones who are building a lot of this stuff. And even when you think about where the alpha comes from when it comes to AI, it's not really AI to recommend someone to book a spa if they haven't booked a spa. That's rules-based. And so when you think about upselling and all these things, ultimately, even if you know someone loves snowshoeing, the most profitable thing you could do is upsell them on a more profitable room. So this experiences, personalization kind of stuff is great, but when it comes down to it, the really important thing as you're experimenting and trying and learning is two things. Are you increasing revenue, or are you decreasing expenses? And so I think what's really cool about these guests that we have on today is that they're all focused on really bread and butter improvements to the P&L using AI, not trying to get too far over their skis. And I think we have Lagunas from Levee, Adam Harris from Cloudbeds. I'll let you guys do a quick intro after. Richard Valtr from Mews, and Segredo from Hapi. Do we have microphones for these guys?
That might help. Here, why don't I?
Wait, they're inside here? Oh,
are they?
Sorry, guys, that was my job.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was Jordan's fault, not mine.
All right, there we go. Pass to Lewis, buffet style. So what's really cool about this panel here is that I think that if I had characterize their approach to AI, I would say Richard and Al have focused on back office operations. How do you make things incrementally better and more efficient for the staff? Yeah. I think Adam and Cloudbeds is really focused on customer acquisition. How do we use AI to have non-rules-based systems that get you way more RevPAR than you could have gotten on your own, driving occupancy and ADR. And I think Lewis is agnostic. I feel like Lewis is building the foundational layer that's helping chains leverage the data that's in their ecosystem. And he's like, I don't really care how you use it, but I'm going to give you the tools to make sure that you have everything that you need, whether that's MCPs or agents down the line, even though a lot of that stuff really isn't happening that much now. So with that, I'd like to just kind of go through. Al, we'll start with you. Give us a 1 minute on Levee and how you guys are bringing AI to hotels through the product.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, everyone. My name is Al Lagunas. I'm the founder of Levee. So we're an AI agent platform for your back of house teams. So what we do is we've been very focused on using multimodal agents, so video and audio, to capture data from the back of house teams and being able to unlock automation across, again, back of house and really unlock that bottleneck that a lot of hotels have. We focus on using video and voice because a lot of back of house teams don't have a lot of experience working with technology. So our focus was, how do we make it as easy as possible for someone to let us know what's going on with their work, what they're doing, and if we have that information, everything else downstream of that, or upstream, depending on how you look at it, becomes a lot smoother, quicker, and easier. You can run with a leaner team without sacrificing service.
And drilling down specifically for housekeepers now, right? It's room inspections for housekeepers using their mobile device as easy and quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Cool. Adam?
Adam Harris, CEO and co-founder of Cloudbeds. We're one of the largest PMSs in the world, and one of the things that we've focused on for the last 12 years is single sort of data orchestration around many facets of your organization, and we're very excited about what AI is bringing in terms of taking system of records, those three-letter acronyms that we all know are famous in this industry, and making them system of action and helping you guys drive intelligent decision-making on what we have amassed as one of the largest databases of information, and happy to kind of go into that later.
Cool.
Richard Valtr, founder of Mews. We're also a PMS. And I think for us, the main kind of focus has always been, we fundamentally think that this industry has kind of three key stakeholders. On the one side, there's the kind of the asset owner or manager or whatever it is, and there it's really about kind of doing every single thing in our system to help the NOI, help make sure that every single year that asset is actually kind of gaining in value. Then on the other side, there's the kind of the profile side, the demand side, which is where you have the kind of the actual guest data most of the time, and that's really kind of when, for example, brands go asset light. They're fundamentally looking at that kind of CRM aspect of and that's the main kind of stakeholder that we think is most powerful there, and that's why we say that we're a PMS, but actually the whole system always functions that everything gets assigned to a customer or to a company. So from that side, it's a totally different architecture to every other PMS that's out there. And then on the last side, the other key stakeholder is the fulfillment side. So that's really the staff, the management companies, the ones who actually kind of make sure that they're doing the work. And they're what we're trying to do for all three of these kind of stakeholders is really trying to think of tools where all of this is just enhanced by technology. I think that if you substitute the word AI, which I think has lots of different kind of connotations to it, for the word middleware, I think for me, AI is actually just most simply understood as just very effective middleware in between all of these things. So, as us kind of as the orchestration layer in between all these three parts, that's where we see the kind of the technologies that are coming in, whether it's computer vision, whether it's better LLMs, they're all basically acting in concert to actually kind of lift up all three of these key stakeholders in hospitality.
Thanks.
And Louis Segredo, co-founder and CEO of Data Travel, the developers of Hapi. Our mission, as Jordan put it, is that we're consolidating the data in real time for the hotel enterprises to be able to have a better understanding of what's happening in their hotels and to better engage with the guests with using a consistent API layer back. So really creating the foundational plumbing to enable the hotel companies to better engage with their guests.
Awesome. And I think one of the really interesting things about this panel as well is kind of like where you guys sit in the go-to-market kind of spectrum, where like Al is a startup that's piloting with these management companies and other hotel groups. Two guys in the middle are kind of like super high scale, super high growth, talking to tons and tons of hotels. And Louis, you're really enterprise focused, like working directly with the chains, very consultative. How would you guys each characterize the appetite of hoteliers in those conversations for AI? Like, what are they asking you for? Are there misconceptions that they have? How do you feel that the market is approaching this right now, based on your sales and growth conversations?
Yeah, I think definitely from an appetite perspective, there's a lot of appetite out there. One of the first conversations I ever had with someone in the space was, I asked them why they took the call and why they're interested, and they said, because if this works, it should make everything better. And I was like, okay, well, that's a very simple way to put it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of appetite where we've had success, and where we see our customers and partners have success is when we narrow the focus, figure out a problem to solve. I think George mentioned problems to be solved in the space, because the reality is, yes, AI should make everything better, can make everything better. But when we go to our partners, our customers, and we narrow that focus on a specific problem or use case, that's where we see success and the excitement around AI actually coming to fruition.
I really appreciated the humanity comment from Laura earlier in the day. We share, and we rarely agree on anything, Richard and I, but there are two sides of this industry, and at the end of the day, many of you have heard me say data is human, and it's the guest and we have the staff, and both of them work in concert, and they're equally important in the relationship of what this amazing industry is. And so from our perspective, when we have these conversations with you, and you tell me what your real problems are, From our perspective, it's twofold. One is it's really hard to go and acquire guests. It's probably more expensive than it ever has, and it's going to be challenged with LLMs changing the way we search. And the second side is operationally. We lost 8 million humans from this industry because of COVID. And now we have immigration policy that none of us have any say in. And that's shorting the labor supply. And so when you think about what that represents, it really gives a moment to look at the ROI from tools that can help augment this human behavior in new ways to drive more efficiency. That's why we built a foundation model. We were one of the first to do it. We actually took the industry and said, wow, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, you name it, does not speak hospitality. In fact, 0.004% of all tokens inside this industry or inside those archives is hospitality related. It doesn't know the difference between booked or booking. It just doesn't have the contextual intelligence. And so we took all of that data and threw it into an LLM that we actually trained specifically on the industry. And what was so fascinating about it is it actually gave us better reach and better visibility into these two sides of that coin so that we could focus on the features of improving the conversion from a go-to-market or conversion from our operations. But we had to learn what the space was. And then from there, the rest is features. The rest is easy to merchandise. It's very easy to create more efficient agents to help back-end staff. So very, very excited. But I agree, Jordan. We're very early in this journey.
Yeah, and when you get requests from hoteliers, would you say more labor augmentation or customer acquisition is more important to hoteliers right now in the context of AI?
I think everyone is very scared that search has dramatically changed. We hear that Google search has dropped year over year by a sizable number, and I keep hearing a different number. I think that's the easiest thing to go fix right now is how you think about tying revenue, marketing, and the whole commercial strategy together. Our foundation engine can actually take 4 billion data points, manipulate 1 million permutations per hotel, and create a forecast that's at a 95% accuracy. 95% accuracy, 180 days forward. Okay? The closest RMS in the planet can only do 85. That's a monumental improvement when you think about that from an operational asset, organizational asset. That has effects on how I staff, how I buy supplies, how I do my rotations, when I do maintenance. And then on the other side, I can package, I can price. These are features. These are nice things that I can change the way I think about how I operate my business. But it all came back down to that fundamental understanding of what this industry is. And we have two sides of that coin, and those humans are really important. We got to give them superpowers.
Yeah, and Richard, as you guys think about AI product development, there's kind of the demand that you're getting from the market, and there's also an extent of knowing the market might want unrealistic things, and your team knows, okay, well, this is a really huge pain in the ass to log into this dashboard and analyze it every day. Let's put a smart tip in the apps that they can converse with and just see the rationale behind any data. How do you guys think about AI product development and filtering out the noise and deciding where do we build right now? Because there's so much opportunity and there's so many flashy objects to chase. How do you guys think about building the right things and filtering out the BS and getting to the stuff that actually can make an impact today?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you do get asked a lot of these things, and I think that sometimes it's not fashionable to show humility, but I think that for example, I do think it's difficult to think about how to build things like foundational models for any tech company basically right now, because it's just too difficult to actually compete with the ChatGPTs and any of these. I think putting a contextual layer on some of the foundational models is interesting, but I feel like, from that perspective, being able to actually, have a prognosis on how ChatGPT's pulse is going to actually kind of change the search algorithm, for nobody knows what memory actually kind of is today. And back in the days, you'd have one person basically who'd kind of work at Google that you could get into your company and somehow you could get an edge. I think with LLMs, it's really difficult to actually imagine how anyone who even works at OpenAI will be able to actually, come into a Marriott or even, an Amazon and actually say, like, these are the decisions that the LLM is actually kind of making. So I think for us, we're trying to stay humble in our product development and saying, like, where can we help? Where can we actually use the tools that are out there today that are going to actually make a huge difference, and then think about, what do we need to actually add? So, for example, I'm a huge fan of robotics. I think that, there will be a point in time, probably in the next decade, probably not in the next 3 years, when we can have, some robot that cleans our rooms. But up until then, we need housekeepers. And if we want housekeepers, even despite the different, immigration policies that we have everywhere around the world, not a lot of them are going to be able to, for example, speak English. So you need to use LLMs to be able to facilitate communications in multiple different languages, making sure that the information that is actually kind of transferred is really, really clear. Same thing with, for example, you mentioned the smart tips. For us, it's just about, we think that there is a labor shortage, but an unwillingness to have overstaffed receptions. So from that perspective, we think that the person who was, the idea of having a bellboy, a receptionist, and a concierge, that needs to be formed into one person. So how do we make a world-class concierge out of every single person who's a receptionist through smart tips? And so we try and think about what are the practical ways that we can add any specific type of LLM, computer vision, any of these new technologies that are rapidly expanding, and actually make sure that there is a real ROI that then comes, with that associated feature. So you're not just buying features because basically, like, there's there's an Excel sheet with all the different things that you need, but there's an outcome whenever we actually kind of produce something. So I think that's the most exciting thing, I think, about this industry, that has been very feature focused. And now we see that very slowly over time, and I think it's because of the fact that owners are under so much pressure to actually kind of, still in a high interest rate environment, squeeze as much profit out of their properties as much as possible. So we just think about how to do that with as few staff as possible, and how can all of these different tools actually really, really help you towards that.
Yep. And Louis, you're obviously in these conversations with a lot of the big chains, and hearing about how they're kind of thinking about AI, obviously within the lens of a CRM or a data lake. What are the things that you're hearing from your partners and customers? Are there things that they're, like, excited about right now, or, like, where they think the future can go?
I think that there's one of our partners in particular that's doing a really great job in this, and it's Wyndham. Wyndham has taken an approach where generally it's a franchise organization, but they're using looking to employ AI to enable services for their franchisees. So it's almost like a new model where it's a combination of franchise organization that's actually delivering managed services, and they're not doing it necessarily with people. Well, there's a people component to it, but they're looking to offer it as AI services, and it's a great way of them essentially creating greater value with their customers.
Yep. And on the conversation of kind of chains versus independents, it seems like the chains have this massive advantage of sitting on this huge data set, but there's this huge disadvantage of a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape to push through. If it's something conversational, they're going to be a lot more guarded about what's being sent to guests. Independents can be a bit more nimble. Where do you guys see kind of the innovation spectrum right now? Not in terms of, obviously you guys both work with both sides, it will be politically correct, but just strategically, which do you think is in a better position, an independent or a chain? Because at the same time, independents now have access to technology that, like, chains used to provide all of these SOPs for hotels to operate. And now it's like, if one of those SOPs is a housekeeping and maintenance checklist, well, you can now program that within an app, and you could have AI that's going through and making sure that everything's within quote unquote brand standards. Do you guys think chains still have the competitive advantage that they used to in the world of AI?
I think they will. I think that there's, if you look at it foundationally, they say, data first. And the simple matter is that they have more access to data. And they'll have more access to the scale required to be able to work on the customer acquisition side.
Yeah.
So I think that there's still a lot of relevance there. The OTAs brought kind of a leveling of the playing field against the chains, or really a competing force against the chains. They thought it was a leveling force, but it was more of a competing force.
Yeah.
But into the future, we're essentially at a moment now that what will distribution look like into the future? So the fact that they have large data sets to work with and large customer bases,
Yeah.
I think the brands will still be in a strong spot.
Adam, do you agree? Do you think, well, we'll pick on Accor since they're far away. Do you think Accor has more data than Cloudbeds?
They have different data. My short answer is no. So data is super important when it's structured, organized, and efficient. I trained my own LLM inside my house. I have my own Jarvis. I built it in a day. So to do that, it's really about how you effectively put the data into action, how you think about a RAG. At the end of the day, if you're a supplier in the room, you are king or queen. You own the inventory. The OTAs are looking to you to then sell those things. So you have a competitive advantage because you are the source of truth at the end of the day. However, OTAs have the same information on their websites that you do. And so differentiating it down to an address level and that interspatial information set that's around that is probably the most critical thing that you could do today. And that's where you can fight and create some level playing field. Richard was talking about how even researchers inside OpenAI do not understand why an answer is given to you yet. That's really terrifying and also exciting because it gives us a lot of experimental opportunity to sort of play with it. So if you can train an edge model super fast, and I did one in a day, and now I've built more and more, and I've gotten really nerdy on this stuff. But when you think about that, the data set is more important. So if you look at what the enterprise level ecosystem is, if you got 18 systems on average working together, I've never heard that Oracle tells Salesforce what to do, and Salesforce has never told Oracle what to do. However, in Cloudbeds ecosystem, where you have 14 of those 18 systems in one database, all homegrown with one of the largest portfolio of hotels in the world, the action that I can do will outperform any brand any single day of the week. And that's one of the things that we're trying to bring forward to both the brands as well as independents. And we have live properties using our software in a very orchestrated manner. We've always been this sort of like management layer, this operating system, and we're really excited about that. And so the data set, yes, we probably have equal to what Accor is, but from the standpoint, you don't need that much data. All of you have enough data to train it on your property to be effective today.
Yep. Richard?
Yeah, as Adam said, like I actually completely agree with everything that he just said.
That's two.
No, like I genuinely think that the independents now have a huge advantage because they can move, and I think that experimentation is the name of the game at the moment, and I think that that model of getting in, I'm sorry to say it, but like a consultant to try and train you on how these things are actually going to kind of go. I think, Laura was basically we had the same thing. We said to everyone, okay, everyone at Mews, no matter where you are, go out and build your own bot. And then everyone just expected training. And I was like, well, go and speak to the LLM. Like, it'll give you training. Yeah, like go and speak to Claude, like spend some time with him, just, invite him to your house. And I think that's a mind shift change that I think it's the operating model of a lot of brands. And, we work with some of the biggest ones. And I think that the ones that we work with are grateful for our partnership, basically from that perspective. But it is a huge mind shift change because now there won't be an outside force doing this, basically. I think the way that we think about benchmarking, the way that we think about, how we actually think, what is good, you're going to be kind of looking at maybe some of the suppliers, like all the vendors that are here to actually help you. But I think it's mainly a kind of mind shift change that'll come. It's not something that will stay, whenever I look at these rollout projects, basically, that are 6 or 7 years, I'm like, that's crazy. Like if we had to wait 6 or 7 years to actually get something changed in our system, we'd be dead.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like the assets are going to stay there. People are going to travel. Those kinds of like fundamental things are not going to kind of change, but the profitability profile of, you know, the way that you do revenue management, the way that you think about structured data. So for example, right now, I'm not sure if there's any brand in the room that has very good kind of even a kind of total inventory of its own knowledge set about every single property, that it knows, for example, you know, which of its balconies are south facing. You know, and that's going to be really important for the kind of the memory AIs, you know, whether it's Gemini, whether it's OpenAI. That's where you can make your profit. And if you're not actually thinking about having that level of structured data within, you know, your inventory, and you're not working with a provider that can think in that way, then that property is probably going to be missing out on a huge amount of profit. And if, you know, a lot of this kind of ancillary revenue right now, I think it's kind of seen as a nice to have because of the acceleration of AI and because of the acceleration of, you know, the way that credit card companies and banks and all of these different types will be trying to get in on the game and trying to actually kind of understand this. I think we will see even more power to the OTAs unless actually the kind of anyone who's in the hotel world and on the brand world basically will want to actually kind of compete with that. So I think that really is for the first time an actual true existential problem for the brands. And maybe I'm being hyperbolic about it, but I do really, really think that, you know, it might not come this year, might not come next year, might not come in 3 years' time, but by the time that we get to the end of this kind of decade or 2035, there will be a fundamental shift in the way that we think about profitability and the way that we think about, you know, the actual margin profile of a hotel business.
Yeah, I love that idea of SaaS as a consultant because, like, ultimately you bring on McKinsey or BCG because they're looking at a bunch of different hotel groups or businesses and other rental cars or whatever it is, and they're trying to develop insights based on your data. What you're saying is, like, we work with thousands of hotels around the world. We have the system of record. We have the system of action. We're not just going to give you a recommendation in 6-9 months for a few $1,000,000. We're going to try something on a sample of 3,000 hotels and then see how that
because ultimately,
compares
like, that's the thing that will differentiate us. Like, you know, for Mews, like, we just talk about, you know, we want the top 20% of all hotels in the world in terms of profitability running on our system. And that's the main metric that we go after. We don't really, you know, it's if we know that we are more profitable than any other PMS that's out there or any other operating system or whatever you kind of call it, that's the only measure of success that we care about.
Yeah. And as you guys think about department level innovation, where are you guys most excited about from a department? Revenue management, marketing, sales, operations, guest experience. Maybe let's start with you, Al. Like, I know you're biased by probably.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm obviously a little biased since we built tech for the back of house, but yeah, in a way, right? But no, the reason I think it's the most exciting is, you know, we opened the conversation with talking about Lovable, and one of the things that AI's sold to us as is we can all build our own apps now. We're all developers, but 80% of the global workforce doesn't use a computer at all. They're frontline workers. So it's not about us now being able to build apps. It's about the 80% of the world now being able to use a computer at the same level we can. You know, I always tell the story of my mom. If she wants to book a flight, she'll call me because she has no idea how to book a flight. But if she could just talk to her phone, she could book a flight, no problem. So when we think of applying that in a, you know, business-to-business setting, is how can we make it easy, conversational, video-based, to have someone who's never used a computer before in their work to now be able to use one. So that's why when it comes to, you know, where do I think the biggest ROI is, the biggest chance for innovation, it's back of house. It's this workforce that's never, or in some cases, you know, some people do have some tech, but you know, they've never been able to use a computer to the level that, you know, we've all been doing for 20 plus years or however long, you know, or however old we are. So that's where the big unlock is now AI democratizes the way that we can use computers and allows people, allows anyone to use a computer at a high level.
Adam?
So we call it revenue intelligence. I think it's a very exciting area that we've been working on for close to 2 years now. And since we do, you know, $20-30 billion worth of room inventory from a distribution perspective, we've always saw that the left hand doesn't necessarily talk to the right hand. So what the distribution teams are doing and how they're thinking about their channel mix, versus what marketing is doing and positioning and social media and all that, there really was never a tie over. And so when we think about the understanding that we can forecast the property well, we knew that we could then go, what's my commercial strategy from that? How do I think about how I sell rooms, how I package, how I merchandise, but also how do I market, how do I position, how do I think about the tie out between those two? And we fully automated that. So, you know, we have segmentation of guests and in a very, very dynamic CRM. We have a marketing engine that can actually write campaigns on your behalf, spin up imagery that works with that audience, send that out and facilitate. We can then price and package and do the upsell during our guest journey. And that's all coordinated through this really, really sophisticated. And it still keeps the human in the loop. So you still have to sign off on it. We want that input. We want that input because there's localized understanding. We might miss an event occasionally with some of our event scrapers and whatnot. And so we found that to be incredibly effective. We have property in London. It's a Mercure. It's a branded hotel. It was seeing RevPARs of $124 where its comp set was at 64 in January. Right? And that's because of advanced marketing and tying those two together. And so those little moments give me so much hope for you all because we're bringing tools that you're asking for and we're putting them into work. And now we have thousands of hotels deploying it today.
Richard, we're running low on time.
Yeah, like I really have to say that actually all of it's exciting because there are things that you can do in revenue management that then needs the fulfillment layer to actually do it. So for example, like you can upsell a room or you can, for example, request, a late checkout, but unless basically that housekeeper gets notified in a way that he or she understands basically and can turn that room around quickly, you're going to have an operational challenge. And I think that's the thing that will prevent a lot of these things actually kind of happening. It's the operations need to change. They need to become more real time. We need to stop thinking about the 11 a.m. checkout and the 3 p.m. check-in. We need to start thinking about kind of, what's going to drive the most revenue, how to facilitate that and actually change our operations based on that. And that's going to, be a huge supply issue because, for example, it might just mean that we now need to have, hundreds of extra suppliers that we actually kind of bring in to our hotels.
Yep.
And again, that puts the onus on, us as the orchestration layer to actually be much, much better at actually making sure that all of those different requests are done in real time.
Yep.
Richard, I got to say, I solved that problem 16 years ago on the housekeeping front. I do.
You didn't even need AI.
Yeah, and I did need AI. It was all HI. I would agree. I think that there's opportunity that's on all sides of the spectrum. I would agree that there's more on the revenue side. It's more tangible. But going back to what Laura said, I think that's a really interesting paradox, and maybe a good place to close. She was talking about, and we have, Al has a very different way of looking at the world and a very different solution for a new perspective, let's say. But Laura's saying, look, that's great, but we have to take little steps. So I think that if we think about the next steps of action are to say, hey, what are little bits that you can automate along the way?
Yep.
And then start creating value, and then start to create a perspective of what's the big transformational.
Yep, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think in aggregate, there's opportunities across all these departments. I think the big thing is about improving our processes in this industry. If you look at how, especially chains, what we talked about, independents versus chains, it's clear that chains have a huge advantage because of the data that they're sitting on top of, but there are ways to basically alleviate these disadvantages, and it's operating in different ways than in the past. So in the past, Hilton, you're probably here based on geography. You say, oh, we're Hilton, we use Kipsio, we're not talking to any other guest experience platforms. Well, you should probably find out why Wyndham is excited about Canary and what features they're bringing. You should be thinking about this in a strategic way to constantly be innovating on the approaches that your vendors are bringing you, but also seeing what's in the market. And Reed Hastings from Netflix would say, you should always, no matter how happy you are in your job, you should go out and talk to other companies, find out your worth. And I think the same thing happens with tech procurement. We need to stop creating these walled gardens, and we need to open up, have ideas, Don't go crazy and spend the next 2 months on Lovable trying to build an app, but you should be constantly pinging the market and figuring out what data signals are out there. And the other thing is, don't try to do it yourself. Again, to that point of like, don't spend the next 2 months building something in Lovable that an engineer could have probably built better at Cloudbeds or Mews or Hapi in a couple of weeks. Don't go overboard and try to build your own stuff. So like, be out in the market, be figuring out what ideas. Coming to events like this is an amazing idea. Talking to vendors, talk to your vendors, competitors, try to bring in all those best ideas and filter through and find out what are the things that actually are going to move the needle from a profit and loss standpoint. And I think that's how we can approach things better. It's all based on culture. So I know we're a little over the time
Yeah,
was blocked. I apologize.
Yeah, we got to wrap because.
Do we have time for a question or two, or people are probably hungry?
I mean, if you want to ask a question or do you want to eat, I guess it's up to you guys. Eat. We got to go. We're 10 minutes over,
Thanks,
man. So
guys.
appreciate it.